Hey everybody, this is Kirk Kilgrave for the Kilgrave Corner, where horror writers talk horror. Today my guest is Chris Sorensen, who's written the horror trilogy, the Messy Man series. I guess I'll say the Messy Man trilogy. So Chris, thanks so much for showing up.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So like I mentioned to you in our email communication, I did read the first book, The Nightmare Room, which is an awesome title, by the way. And while I was reading it, it was sort of a different feel for a horror book, and I liked that. I just couldn't put my finger on why it felt a little distant to me, and that made it a little bit scarier, I think.
Hmm.
So I was wondering what kind of feel you were going for, and it could be like, a genre, a subgenre, if you're looking for any type of. That's kind of how I write as a writer. I can just feel it more than think it. What were you
Right.
kind of feel were you going for with the Nightmare Room and then into the rest of the trilogy?
Uh, I, I wanted to write something that was a little autobiographical. And being an audiobook narrator myself, and having at the time having the audio booth down in the basement of this old house that we're renovating, and having an elderly relative living in the back room, bedridden.
Oh.
Um, those were some tough times, and so I wanted a way to kind of process that.
Hmm.
It was early, and it was it's the second year of our marriage, and so there was a lot going on emotionally for her, for me, for definitely the woman in the next room here.
Hmm.
Uh, and so, like I said, I wanted to process it, and I had worked on a story similar to this with a soap director, and we developed for about a year, and it never ended up going anywhere. And I came back to it, and I went, there's something here that I like. So I stripped out everything I didn't like, everything we had added in, and started rebuilding uh, here in this room. Where a lot of these things were taking place, and my father had passed away from cancer recently, and so there was a lot I wanted to explore, older generations leaving and the effect that has on our generation. But I also wanted to play with time,
Hmm.
and uh, I knew that Peter, the main character, would be the focus of the haunting, and not so much even the house. So I tend to think of this book and the whole series as it's a story of a haunted man rather than a haunted house. He just happens to be in a terrifying house that brings it out, but he's haunted by a lot of things, both that you can see and that you can't see.
So that's really an interesting point you made, meaning that it was a haunted man than a haunted house. And basically every single one of my stories is the same way.
Hmm.
It's, you know, you enter a if you're not in the haunted house, is it really haunted? I mean, it's like, you're in a forest or you're not in a forest and a tree falls, no one's there to hear it. Did it really fall? It's sort
Right,
of like a haunted house. There's a ghost in there, there's a demon in there. If there's no one in there, this ghost is twiddling his thumbs.
right.
So it really does. I love that you've done that, and I did feel a lot of the like you said, the parental issues, I guess, that you've gone through. And I know in an interview or two that I've read of yours online, you mentioned that you were trying to hope to make sense of your relationship with your father, and
Hmm.
that really came through. It was very real and a little raw. And I think that was great because sometimes you need that rawness, that emotion to come through. And it really jumped off the page, for me at least. So, I really enjoyed the book. And like I said, I have all three of them. I'll have to be going through those as time goes on. But one of the things I wanted to mention was um, the evil element in the Nightmare Room. What more can you tell us about that thing that was haunting Peter?
That was I uh, wanted to explore the idea of a kind of a dark guardian angel, um, a something that was trapped with him as much as he was trapped with it. Um,
Hmm.
Not a symbiotic relationship, but he's tethered to it from an early age, and I wanted to explore how that informed his choices, how it changed his personality, how it's like a dark star that's circling him, and he's constantly feeling the pull of its gravity.
Yeah.
And so he's been haunted his whole life by this thing. And without giving
And
too much
didn't know it.
away, he
And
didn't
didn't
know
know
it. No,
it.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
And there is a twisted form of kindness that it exhibits. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
I thought of like a feral animal. What is, there's still something in there that is worthwhile. What is that? And it really, it plays a key role in the story, but also in maintaining his sanity. Even
Yeah.
though, I mean, it's bound to him as much as any person is in his life.
Yeah. And of course, we're in different states. You couldn't have noticed this, but when you mentioned that, what he's being haunted as much as, the other way around, I had goosebumps for about 25 seconds because I was remembering the book. I read it maybe 6 months ago, and I was just remembering it and just thinking of the ending and how, I was about to say something about, what was going on in certain scenes. I'm not going to do that. You guys have to read it or listen to it. I'm sure you did the audiobook version of your
Yes, I
three
did.
books.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Now, one of the things I want to ask you about that is when you're writing it, are you thinking about narrating it? Is it going both from your head in your ears to the typewriter?
Uh, no, it's not. And I've talked to other author narrators who say the opposite.
Huh.
Um, I, I've probably recorded close to 300 audiobooks by this point in my
Wow.
career, and I struggle with every single one because
Hmm.
I am dyslexic. So I'm a dyslexic audiobook narrator. I actually use my
Wow.
career to help me speak in complete sentences.
Huh.
Um, so I try to keep that world at bay until I get out there.
Okay.
It certainly does help. I didn't do this with the first book, but I did with the second too, because I narrated both of those as well. Is I didn't publish the second two until I had recorded, because as I record it, I go, you know what, that doesn't make sense, or this doesn't sound right. So
Hmm.
I'll change it to audio friendly language, and then that goes into the actual text that gets released as ebook and paperback. So
Huh. Interesting. I was curious about that. I know your website said you've done over 200, but now it's over 300.
I haven't updated that in a while, and
Wow.
this last year has been a very busy year for people who work at home.
Good for you. Congratulations. That
Thank
must
you.
be that must be really God, like multiple personalities, right? Because you're really acting out all these different types of characters all the
Mm-hmm.
time. So what is that like? How do you get in the mental frame of mind for something like that?
I when it's a series, you really have to gear up, because
Hmm.
there was a Margaret Peterson Haddock series, the Missing series,
Yeah, right.
that went on. I recorded that, I think, for 7 years. As
Wow.
she would record it, I would get the manuscript from Recorded Books. I'd go into the studio at that point, and I'd read it before anybody else. And but I had to, some character, she'll, like a good writer, she'll bring back a small character from book one, and in book four, they have a major role.
Right.
So I have to save little MP3 files of each character's voice, and they'll,
Interesting.
like a few sentences that embody who they are.
Yeah.
And so then I have a little cheat, playlist that I go back to. Oh, Carly's back. Okay, let's play that. Oh, okay. And usually it comes back pretty quickly. But I mean, there are other books where you find out quite a bit late in the book. Oh, they have a guttural sound to their voice. They are from this specific region, and so if you haven't read ahead, you're kind of screwing yourself over. So
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating. Because I mean, I have a narrator for all of my books. She's the
mhm,
same one because a lot of the same characters appear
right.
in my trilogies or series or what have you. I'll have to mention that, save an audio file,
I
just
learned that
because.
nobody teaches you these things. It's all learned. It's like, I don't know what profession would be similar, but you learn this from going to
Yeah.
conferences or just chatting with people. There's no manual on how to do this.
Huh. Okay, let's jump back into your as fascinating as that sounds, and that's interesting because as a librarian, everybody on the show knows I'm a librarian. I mention it like every time, but of course I know who that author Haddock is that you
Right,
mentioned. She does young adult books, right?
right, right.
Exactly. So it's crazy that I can somehow pull these things in where a lot of other people would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I'm glad about that. But um, what I was really curious about, just looking back at some of the other two books in the series and looking at The Hungry Ones, the second book, how does the events in the first book carry over into the next one? Because I know Peter is like, isn't he sort of a side character, a secondary character in the second and third?
He is a he's got a pretty big role in the second and
Okay.
major role in the third, but the
Oh,
second
okay.
one he's definitely takes a step back.
All right.
And I don't want to say too much, but there's everybody has multiple versions of themselves in this life, and I liken the trilogy only in this respect to the Back to the Future series, where you have story one start to finish, then story two kind of undoes some of what
Hmm.
happens in story one, and then
Oh,
story three goes back even farther and wraps things up. And so I mean, I had sheets and sheets of timelines running back and forth and trying to keep, trying to keep everything like keeping myself sane and trying to keep the readers sane. So
right.
I'd strip out the roots went too far because it was like mycelium kind of
Huh.
groping to each other. So, but yeah, it's kind of book two is kind of a redo, and
Hmm.
we we see that you can't that redos aren't as easy as they seem, and that
Yeah.
uh, and so we follow a character we didn't get to. One of the main characters is a character that I touch upon, an important character in book one, but it's really his story, and a brand new character who should be ancillary to all the events, but for some reason she had a loud voice.
Hmm. Was that loud voice the psychic or medium?
No, but
No.
she's got a very loud voice herself.
Yeah. Is she
Uh,
in the third one or
she
no?
is.
I thought that was her.
It's her story in book
Right.
three, but no, it's actually the owner of the motel that they stayed in for a brief moment in book one.
Oh, I was wondering if it was going to be the bar owner because he was fun for a while until he did
Yeah.
something that he got his hand slapped for
Yes, he
in a
did. Yes,
nice
he
way.
did. Yes, he did.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he's got his own. He clung on for a few books too. So
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I liked him a little bit less after that, and I'm
yeah,
sure that's understandable, and that's totally understandable. But yeah, I like the way the wife handled it. That was pretty
yes.
classy. Yeah. So was this, I'm guessing based on what you just said about the Back to the Future trilogy, which I love and just
Hmm.
rewatched again last year. I usually visit that every, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. Just I love the first two. Third one, it's all right, but the first two are classic. So did you always conceive of this as a trilogy, or were you just like at the end of the first one, hmm, there's other possibilities here?
It was the latter, definitely. I thought it was one and done.
Hmm.
Um, and it was actually the first person to read my books is actually my mother.
Hmm.
And that's been the case ever since my father passed away. She says, "Can I read? Are you done? Can I read the chapters as you write them?"
Huh.
Um, and she worked in an army steno pool and picks up. She's a great editor as I go along,
Oh, cool.
but she's whip smart about story.
Oh.
And I finished it off, and there's a version out there where it ends quite differently.
Hmm.
And she
Okay.
said, "I didn't know if I wanted to call you about this."
Hmm.
And but I felt like I had to. Let's talk about the ending. And so
Oh.
we chatted it. I stuck pretty closely to the screenplay version, the 25-page outline screenplay version for the ending. But and I went, you know what, you're right. Let me go away. And I went away to, I think it was Ithaca for a
Hmm.
weekend and just started thinking about it and came up with. And once I came up with the new ending, I went, this opens up a door for more, suddenly then all these little notes start popping out of my head. Okay, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. And I went, okay, hold on, I've got to go and record a few books now, and then I'll come back and I'll sit down. And I started writing pretty quickly after that.
So it could explain some of the playing around with time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and I'm also wondering if, because like you said, the second one undoes some things in the first one. That's
Right.
interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. Do you get to see your characters a little bit differently after some of those redos take place, or like, do they
Yeah,
change at all based on that?
they do, and some you get to see for the first time. You get to see them in action for the first time, but the main one is Peter,
Mm,
because as much as I really like the character, I have some real problems with his choices in life,
mm,
and so I wanted to explore. Uh, I wanted to explore at what price do you have to pay to get redemption, um,
hmm.
and so that's what his journey is through all three books. Because like some of the people, like some of the comments readers have had who said, I couldn't stomach what Peter did. I mean, no matter, you cannot justify certain things that he did, no
Yeah.
matter what. And a lot of these are parents. And I went, I can see that, I can see both sides. This is not a sales pitch, but read all three books, and then let's chat. So,
Yeah. I know exactly what you're thinking, what you're talking about.
mhm,
I just started a new series called The Whispering Ones, and I didn't
mhm.
realize that yours is The Hungry Ones. But I'm actually, it's the series, and now I'm going to be starting later on after I finish another one. I'm going to be coming out with different title that's similar to, well, and that's not going to be Hungry. But let
Mhm.
me go back to this other one. I'm sidetracking myself here. But yeah, the first one starts out so far, the reviews have been stellar. And the second one, I did something that people are not happy with. And
Mhm.
the thing is, there's really nothing I can do to change that,
Right.
because there's a certain reason that that happened. And
Mhm.
you'll find out why in the third book. Like you said, just
Yeah.
wait until you figure this whole thing out
Mhm.
so it can settle things down. And I'm not going to change the ending. It is the way
Mhm.
it is. Do I like that what happened? No, but it needed to happen for many, 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 many reasons. If readers are interested in following my other books, they'll understand why. But yeah, I totally get where you're coming from with that. And that's why we come out with trilogies or series. It's like Harry Potter. I'm not sure if you're a fan, but
Mhm.
the first two books I thought were very good, but they just got so much better with each one after. And there's some things in there that I'm not too satisfied with. I didn't like that whole thing that Hermione was doing in the fourth book with, I don't know, some elves or some house elves and their
Mhm.
freedom. I was just like, this is not that great of a side of a subplot. Why is it even in here? But it is what it is. It turned out that I think it was important at one point in some of the later books, but you just kind of, like you said, you have to go through all of them to find the bigger picture. So I'm glad you pointed that out. I'm going to go off on a different tangent right now. I'm going to mention something that you've talked about a couple times, but you never really had a chance to go in a little bit of depth. So I'm really
Mhm.
curious to hear your take on this. Every time you've been asked your favorite writer, you said Ray Bradbury. So I'm curious, what about Bradbury's work, either inspires you or makes you think, damn, that guy is so good?
Right. It's the simplicity of his writing, which is very difficult to achieve.
Hmm.
And it's poetic. It is it's it's it raises the mundane. Well, you're in Illinois. It raises Illinois to almost at fantastic levels.
Hmm.
It takes the ordinary, which is how I grew up. I grew up in Monmouth, Illinois. There was cows across the street. We had 10,000 people. The only
Yeah.
job I could find was shelving books at the library or working as a lifeguard.
Hmm.
Um, Reading those books, between those and the Narnia books, um, they 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 instantly, from the first page, they lift you up out of where you are and uh, make you look around and go, oh, what if this, what if this, what if this? And I'll never forget reading, is it in Zen and the Art of Writing? He talked about his way of coming up with ideas is typing one word and then typing what word comes after that and typing another word, period, another word, period. And soon he has a string of words and picking and choosing and going, okay, these go together. Oh, there's an idea. It's just his brainstorming method. And his writing has that feel where one thing leads to the next, And in Dandelion Wine, I can't remember the boy's name, but when he discovers that he's alive, it's on the surface. Any other writer he went out to the woods with his father. His father said, you should come out there, tumble around in the leaves and look at the trees. And, oh, I feel alive. He experiences it fully. He opens up the language and allows you to see through the boy's eyes every little tidbit that he's experiencing, and does it so beautifully that you can't help but experience it yourself, when all it is a walk in the woods with a dad.
Yeah, interesting. Because I know he's written Slaughterhouse-Five, right? Was that,
I
or
think
was
that's
that
Vonnegut. That's Vonnegut.
Vonnegut? Okay.
I love him
No.
too. Love
Oh.
Vonnegut. But
So I'm guessing that you like science fiction or fantasy
I
more
do,
than.
and that's my older brother's influence.
Huh.
I
Okay.
I was drawn toward either horror or dramas.
Okay.
And my brother was always down in the basement making moon landing diorama. He ended up being an aerospace engineer, which
Oh,
is
cool.
yeah. So
You're like, yeah, whatever.
he was the guy making all the little astronaut things. I was the kid sneaking out at midnight to watch the creature feature, or of course Svengoolie in the afternoons
Oh
on
yeah. Oh
Saturday.
yeah, I remember that. Now I look back and go, oh wow. But as a child, it's like, oh,
uh,
this guy's cool.
I knew him back when he was son of Svengoolie.
Oh.
Love that.
So you mentioned two things that you kept returning to were horror and drama.
Right.
Before we got on live, you mentioned that you'd occasionally write a play
Mm-hmm.
for a local theater house in Colorado. This last one that you did that's actually on right now is called The Haunting at the Old Homestead, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So you said it's sort of like a ghostly mystery.
It's yeah.
Yeah, what can you tell everybody about that?
It starts out in the present of someone, a reporter visiting this old brothel turned tourist location and getting a tour, and gets the story of why this place is haunted. And then suddenly it's an Agatha Christie-esque, uh, four people are invited to join the madam of the house on a stormy night to try to solve the mystery of the hauntings that are driving all of the clientele away. And so it's a throwback to all the things I love. It's got all the practical effects. It's got love interest. It's got seances. It's got
Cool.
1890s Ghostbuster-esque character. So, but yeah. This is the second production of it. I saw it maybe about 8 years ago for the first time.
Okay.
Yeah, I got hooked into this theater right out of grad school. I went to grad school for acting, and then it was one of my first gigs was up in Cripple Creek, and started working for the producers there, and then got called in one summer to direct, and then uh, three other folks and myself went to the city and pitched a full season, and we formed a theater company, and that theater company's been there for about 12 years,
Wow.
13, 14 years.
Congratulations.
Doing a
That's
full
awesome.
season. Yeah, doing a full
Mm,
season. Last year was tough. Nothing, the stage was
yeah.
dark last year, but
Yeah. Multi-talented, doing plays, he's recording audiobooks and writing novels himself.
avoiding work any way possible.
Yeah, that's great. So we didn't get into one of the things I ask each of my guests, which is what was it about horror that got you into actually writing it?
Hmm. Hmm.
You like scaring people, obviously,
I
or
like
tricking
scaring. I
them
like
or
scaring myself.
oh,
I
okay.
think. I know it'll scare somebody else if it scares me.
Hmm.
I think I'm a scare connoisseur. If I can translate it to somebody else, so somebody else can experience it the way I am, then I'm doing my job. But it all comes. There was a book that my mother gave me because I had nightmares as a child.
Hmm.
I would wake up screaming, and I would see things in the dark. I would see shadows, and I'd see mice going up the wall. All these waking dream things. And so she got me this book called The Frightful Nobody, and it had
Hmm.
an accompanying little record, and and it was supposed to help you. Oh, you shouldn't be afraid. It's only the frightful nobody, and then it's got ooh. That thing scared the heck out of me.
Hmm.
I mean, it did exactly the opposite. And so I don't know. I think that's where it started. I just
Hmm.
really I was drawn to anything that gave me a shiver up my spine.
Hmm.
And again, I lived in Illinois, rural Illinois, and there was a lot of that around, a lot of stories. Like we had a ghost road with the Crybaby Bridge that your car
Huh.
is supposed to drive itself across.
Hmm.
Down the way was a barn where a farmer supposedly hung his wife and then he killed himself, and the barn is haunted.
Huh.
Half the houses in Illinois are haunted. So.
Yeah, there's a haunted road not too far from me. It's called Monger Road. They actually made a movie of it.
Mm,
And apparently it's, you just drive in along this road and you see somebody running without legs or something. It's
mm.
kind of weird. The movie had one really good scene in it because of course I had to see it because I live, 15 miles away from it. But it wasn't bad for what it was, I guess. But do you still happen to have those nightmares that just give you the shivers?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Much to the chagrin of my wife. Uh, she'll often wake me up, and there'll be somebody. There was one about a month ago. Somebody with a top hat standing next to my bed, next to her closet, just kind of
Wow.
staring in at me, and so she shook me awake.
Huh.
Yeah.
I had one this I had one this morning that I was upset that, the alarm clock went off. In my dream, and this is like toward the end of the dream, which should have really been the beginning if I were writing
Hmm.
it, which is there's somebody at the door and she turns back and said, "There's zombies outside." And I'm like, awesome. And I run into the bathroom. I don't know what kind of, gun or knife I'm gonna find in the bathroom. The only thing I'm gonna find is probably a toothbrush. But that's when I woke up and I was so
Oh,
disappointed. I was like, man, I want to go kill some zombies. Most of the time in my dreams, it's that type of thing. I'm running around with a machine gun like John McClane because I
hmm.
love Die Hard. And I'm like, I'm always either being chased or chasing after someone. Most of the time, it's being chased. And that's
Right.
kind of what all of my novels are about. Each one has someone running away from something or trying to get rid of something in some place, a mansion, a hotel, a home, what have you. So that's it. That's it, everybody. I'm crazy. I don't know. I'm the dream. I have the dreams no one wants, but I love them. I don't know. So now that you've done this trilogy, and I know that you're really busy with all of these audiobooks because you must have a ton on your plate. Is there anything novel-wise you're currently working
I am working on three
on?
at present.
Oh, okay.
I'm working on a creature feature that would be, if it were a movie, it would be on Son of Svengoolie. It'd be on Svengoolie. It's a
Okay.
complete departure,
So like
just
a
because
B movie type.
B movie, cleanse the palate,
Hmm,
write
okay.
something, just write a Saturday afternoon popcorn book.
Cool.
Um, and then I've got a book called Haunting in Cripple Creek, which is not related to the play,
Yeah.
but intersperses my time in Cripple Creek when I lived there. And it's the only place I know where there are two old hospitals that have been turned into hotels.
Hmm.
And one of them
Hmm.
had one, they each have their own features. One has a tunnel that goes underneath the road to the church where down from the morgue they could move the bodies without being seen
Huh.
underground to the church. And the other still has all of the old signs. It's like maternity, surgery, They've
Really?
kept everything, and
Wow.
that's the one I got to stay in when I was directing a show. It was closed for the
Oh,
season, and they gave me the key. The owners gave me the key, and I would have to lock myself into this old hospital
oh,
slash hotel at night when it was snowing.
oh, that's yeah, creepy. I mean, that's the only word I have is just creepy
Yeah.
with those signs on there still. That's just weird.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so much stuff to be mined there. There are the actual mines. You go down
Yeah.
in this tiny little cage, cramped in with people, and then it opens up to this underground world. There's all the casinos there. There's the haunted ghost tours. So
Huh.
I have a story in mind that's set in with a small theater troupe that's a starting up a production inside one of these old theaters.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so
That
there's
sounds like there's a lot of potential for, conflict and thrills going on in that
yeah,
one already. I don't even
and
know the story
and
or
I
the
have
characters.
and I know Cripple Creek like the back of my hand. I mean, I even have Cripple Creek on my it's on it's tattooed on me. Um, but I haven't seen anybody really explore. I mean, like I had never seen anybody write a book about audiobook narrators. And so
Yeah.
it was fun to be able to bring some of the actual details, to the
Yeah.
book. Same with Cripple Creek. I want to bring some of the actual details of the collision of past and present.
Yeah, it was interesting in the nightmare room where he would go into the recording booth and it was I shouldn't say anything more. There was a scene in there that was really good, and there was a lot of tension, and I was just like, "Oh my God, you got to get out of there." But I'm claustrophobic. I mean, when you said down in the
Oh,
mines and go,
yeah.
I was just all of a sudden go, "Oh man, I want to read it just because it's scary. It's too scary for me." Like
Uh,
that movie, The Descent. Have you ever seen
Descent.
that
I'm
one?
making my wife watch that this Halloween. She's never seen
Cool.
it.
God, that sucker. I've seen it like 3 times, and every single time I'm like, "Oh, it's gut wrenching, but in the best way."
I've seen it long enough ago that I'm eager to see it again. I've only
Yeah.
seen it once, so.
hmm Yeah, I think I see it like every 7 or 8 years or something like that. That's
Mhm.
kind of how I love rewatching movies. Is there anything that you like to rewatch pretty frequently or every few number of years,
Yeah,
horror
Night of the
wise?
Living Dead, 1968, all the
I
time.
have oh, sorry, go
Oh no
ahead.
no no no! Everything that is right about horror films is in that movie.
Hmm. I first saw that when I was a kid, a teenager, maybe 13 or 14. And it was late at night. I had just gotten rid of or gotten done watching wrestling, with Hulk Hogan and all those
Right.
guys from the 80s. And this old movie comes on in black and white, and I'm sitting there eating my chili cheese Fritos, just popping in my mouth. I'm like, what is this? And then when was it the baby ate the mother or something, or the other way around? I just totally flipped out. I was like, oh my God, this is the most terrifying thing I've seen. And, I've watched at that time Poltergeist and other
Right.
things, but holy cow, I'd never imagined something like that happening.
Yeah.
So that was my introduction to like deep, dirty horror. I think it was more so than
Yeah.
anything.
I just black and white movies remind me of it's reminds me of old radio shows. I used to listen to the CBS Radio Presents and had records of all these old radio, Orson Welles' Dracula, which is still one of my favorite versions of that.
Oh, wow. I didn't know he did that one.
Oh, it's fantastic. You can find it
Huh.
online with an MP3. It's brilliant.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh. Because of course I'm familiar, of course, with the War of the Worlds, but more of his film work,
hmm
not really his audio
it's
work. So that's
fantastic.
interesting.
The
Huh.
Mercury Theater's version of Dracula, it condenses it, but you feel like you get the whole story. And he's fantastic as Dracula.
Huh. Cool. For those people who are looking out there for something new, Chris Sorensen has your suggestion. So
Yes,
you mentioned that you've done two. You're working on two, I should say. What's the
yes.
third book?
The third book is I've had this discussion with a lot of writers, actors, and other folks about how to deal with the pandemic creative in creative ways to include it in books, to include it in stories, to include it in plays. Such a big chunk of our lives lately.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are choosing to. You know, I have an author friend who says, in my world, the pandemic never happened and it doesn't fit with my storylines. And I went, there's got to be some way that I do want to address it. And I went, horror is the best way. So I have demonic possession pandemic.
Okay. Good. I'm glad that you're veering away from my idea, which
Good.
is 3 books from now. Oh man. But yeah, I have something coming up too. I didn't want to include any pandemic related anything in any of
Yeah.
my books until I was like, I was coming up with this idea that well, of course, I'm not going to tell everybody because
Right.
that's what we do. We're afraid of
Right.
telling everybody our stories. But thankfully, it's not like yours. And of course, I do demonic possession and love it, and will probably continue to always do it just because it's that lack of control and really not knowing the person you really know. But yeah, strangely enough, I'm actually considering doing one of those pandemic things. I think it's mostly going to be after that it takes
Yeah.
place and how what happened before now affects the after, basically. And it sounds like, oh, that sounds boring, but I'm going to kick your ass with this story. So yeah, you're going to be thinking one thing each time, and I'm going to flip it on its head every time around. So we'll have to keep in touch when we're looking at this and how
I
will
want to
we
read your after party story. Yeah.
yeah, how to work on the pandemic when no one wants to read about the pandemic.
I know.
I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of don't, but if it's a horror story, or a science fiction story, or even a
Yeah.
fantasy. But a drama, I'm not interested in a drama. Possibly a comedy though. I think I might be game for a comedy, but
Yeah.
just not drama. I don't. It's just too much drama already.
Yeah.
So, and you really can't make it into a thriller, a suspense. Oh my God, he's running away from the COVID people over there. I mean, I don't know. For all I know, I had it. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but anyway, I'm glad we're off that topic. We'll enjoy it. We'll enjoy it a lot more when we finally get done writing them, and I think people might be interested in reading them at that point.
Yeah.
But so, gosh, I don't really have anything else for us this time, unless there's anything that you want to tell us. I try to do that. If there's any like books that you're reading right now that you might recommend to everybody listening in or watching.
I just came back from Colorado. I just started on the plane, Clown in the Cornfield.
Oh yeah, I own that one by
And
Adam Cesar or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
Caesar.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
How is it? Is it pretty good? I
yeah, it
know.
is. It is.
I,
It is. And I have a hard time reading for pleasure anymore because of the job I do. You know,
yeah, yeah.
just reading and reading takes so much energy. So it's saying a lot when something captures you. So yeah, very much so. I'll let you know how it pans out. I'm about 4 chapters in right now.
Cool. Yeah,
Really
I
quick.
know that one won an award, and I know that the Nightmare Room won an award too. What was that award?
Uh,
Or
I'm
more
I,
than one, actually.
I'm a little doped up on NyQuil right now, so I'm not quite sure what that award was.
Was it a indie horror
It was the
writers?
Indie Horror
Okay.
Award. I can't remember the year. I
Yeah.
can't remember this year right now.
Yeah. Well deserved. I'm sorry you're suffering from a cold. You don't sound it. I appreciate you so much for coming on. It was a blast having you. Hopefully you'll be on at some point in the future to discuss your next works and stuff
Yes,
like
yes,
that.
yes.
Well, sounds great. Thanks again for stopping by, Chris.
All right. Thanks for
Take
having
care.
me.